at-large city councilor for the Jenks City Council. Due to some prior work and family commitments, Mayor Box and Vice Mayor Ogier are not in attendance tonight. I will serve as your chairman for this regularly scheduled Jenks City Council meeting. I'd like now to call this meeting to order. Mr. Macy, can we please have a roll call?
Schelling?
Here.
Isbell?
Here.
Murray? Here. Klein?
Present.
Short?
Here.
OJ? Mayor Box.
Tonight's invocation will be performed by Pastor Buddy Hunter. Mr. Hunter, come on up. Thank you. Please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the privilege of being on this planet at this time. Thank you for the beauty of the day. God, we're at rest in our mind and our spirit, knowing you're in charge of all things. I pray for wisdom and insight for each person in this room, for the discussions, for the decisions, and let us be at peace, knowing it's not all on us. You're in charge of all things, and you're all wise, and you're so good. Lord, we commit the following proceedings to you in the name and the power of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now for tonight's animal welfare, Mr. Reed, please.
Good evening. So tonight we have Samson. Samson is a 4 to 5 month old mixed breed. He will be a fairly large dog, probably around 65 pounds or so. He likes to play with all the other dogs his size and some bigger ones. He's a little shy at first, as you can tell, but he comes out of it pretty quickly. He's a super friendly little guy. He's very affectionate. So if anybody would like to meet Samson or any of his adoptable friends, as always, they can call us at 918-299-6311 or email at animalcontrol@jenksok.org. So, okay, you ready to go?
Thank you, Mr. Reed. At this time, we'll provide the opportunity for citizens' comments. If any citizens have a comment they would like to make about anything not on the agenda, please come to the microphone, give us your name and address. Please keep your comments to under 3 minutes and understand that the council cannot respond or engage in a dialogue during this part of the agenda. Thank you. Mr. Coleman. Dr. Coleman.
My name is Heath Coleman. I live at 1121 West 108th Place, South Jenks. I just have a few comments and concerns that myself and a few of my fellow citizens have had for a while. I want to speak in general about the future economic development in Jenks, specifically with concerns about the spirit of the UDO passed last year. It says that buildings will be in the front and parking in the back. We want to stay diligent with this focus because we think it's a positive impact for the future of Jenks. Additionally, the city ordered a traffic study. It has some relevant information to really all economic development over the next few years. And we would like to remind councilors to please remember to read through this, make sure you incorporate this feedback into all considerations relating to the future economic development. That's all. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments this time? Okay, we'll move on to our official business. Item number 1, consideration and appropriate action relating to a request for approval for the consent agenda.
Make a motion that we approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Vote, please.
Schelling?
Yes.
Isbell?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Short.
Yes. Number 2, consideration appropriate action relating to the items. We'll skip that since we didn't remove anything. Item number 3, presentation relating to the City of Jenks Tax Increment District Number 4 Project Plan and proposed Coal Creek Village Economic Development Project Plan. We are on page 197, I believe. I'd like to introduce Nate Ellis to provide our presentation. Mr. Ellis, please.
Good evening. So we have on your agenda tonight a quick presentation, and then there's actually 2 public hearings that we'll hold. And so this is in regards to the amendment of increment district number 4 that's existing right now, and then the creation of 2 new increment districts, which we've designated at this time D and E. So a TIF district is an economic development tool that's available in Oklahoma. It's authorized under Title 10, Section 6C of the Oklahoma Constitution, and then inscribed in the statutes under the Local Development Act, which is in Title 62, Section 850 and following. And it allows for a governmental entity to capture and apportion the incremental increase in tax revenue resulting from development. Ultimately, the city will consider adoption of an ordinance that would put this in place. Go to the next one. And to conceptualize a TIF district, you have an existing tax base, whether that's ad valorem taxes or sales taxes. There's a historical baseline, and that's established anytime a TIF district is created. The base taxes continue to accrue to the impacted taxing jurisdictions same as they would. So it's only the increase, the increment that results from development. Again, the purpose of a TIF district is to put in place infrastructure and other necessary incentives to cause development to occur. The development is what causes the increase in tax revenues. The TIF district captures that incremental tax for a period of time, and then once the TIF is done and expires, then you have a new, higher, enhanced tax base, at which time all of the revenues flow to the taxing jurisdictions. So the process, initially we have an initial determination of eligibility, and there's a couple different categories. In this particular instance, we have a reinvestment area, and so that's area where that's undeveloped or underdeveloped and isn't likely to occur without significant investment in infrastructure and other incentives that may be necessary to cause that to come to fruition. There's the development of a project plan. And the project plan is basically the framework for how the TIF will operate. So it will establish the duration, which can be for up to 25 full fiscal years, and it designates how much of the TIF revenues will be captured. And so the TIF can capture any increment, any portion of the local tax revenues, including ad valorem, sales tax, hotel tax. Up to 100% of those can be captured. The project plan will establish what the boundaries are, and we have 2 important distinctions. We have an increment district, and that's the geographical area where the development is proposed to occur and where the incremental tax revenue will actually be captured. We have a much larger project area that surrounds that, and this is the area where various supporting improvements are going to take place. So infrastructure costs that, maybe supporting traffic infrastructure, water sewer extensions, things like that occur outside the increment district in some cases, but are necessary to be able to support the development. It will identify what the proposed projects are and the related infrastructure improvements that are necessary, and then the proposed allocation of TIF revenues. The statutes dictate that the city, and you did this a couple months back, establish a statutory review committee, or a TIF review committee, and that's comprised of a representative. The mayor served as the chairman of that committee, representative of the planning commission, and then members of each of the affected taxing jurisdictions were on that, as well as 3 at-large community members. The affected taxing jurisdictions are Jenks Public Schools, Tulsa Technology Center, Tulsa County Health Department, the Community College, the City County Library, and then the City of Jenks. Of course, it's already represented, but does have an ad valorem interest. The project plan is reviewed by the TIF Review Committee, who makes findings of eligibility and financial impact on the taxing jurisdictions and business activities, and ultimately makes a recommendation to the City Council whether or not to consider moving forward with the TIF district. Also, the Planning Commission also reviews the project plan and makes a similar recommendation to the city. We hold 2 public hearings, the first of which is scheduled tonight. The second public hearing in each case is scheduled for the council meeting 2 weeks from tonight, 6 p.m. on May 16th. Once all of those steps have been completed, then the city can consider the adoption of a TIF ordinance that would approve the project plan and create the TIF, or in the case of an amendment, would amend the TIF district. So increment district number 4, which is proposed for amendment, the general location is between 111th Street on the north, 121st Street on the south, the area west of US 75. It was established in 2014, had a 16-year term, expires in about 7 years from now. It captures 100% of the ad valorem tax increment, and it designates that 80% of that goes to reimburse project costs that may be incurred, and 20% goes to the taxing entities. And there's been about 418,000 captured since inception. That's as of June 2022. I think there's been a few additional things that are starting to come on the tax rolls in the last year or two. It also captures an amount equal to 1/2 cent sales tax, and 100% of that is designated to go towards project costs. And so far, there's been about 36,000. It's not a significant sales tax generator at this point, but there are some restaurants and other businesses out there. The original project plan authorizes a total of about $29.5 million in project costs. To date, there's been approved applications for reimbursement of a little over $4 million in various public infrastructure, water, sewer, streets. The proposed amendment is to remove the area south of 116th Street, which 116th Street really isn't a street there, but halfway in between. The proposed development, which is the Coal Creek Village project, is not supported within the existing parameters of Increment District 4. Simply put, the level of infrastructure that's necessary to be done, there will not be sufficient revenue generated within the next 7 years to be able to support that. And so the idea is that gets carved out. It'll reset whatever the base is to the current level for those properties that are removed, and then that property will then become new TIF districts that we'll talk about here in a minute. So you see the existing boundaries right now. Again, that's 121st or 111th on the north, 121st on the south, and then US 75 on the right side of the map. You see there's some parcels that are carved out along 121st. At the time this was done, those were not within the city corporate boundaries. The TIF district does have to fully exist within the city corporate boundaries. I'm sorry, go back. And then the proposed amended boundaries, basically, again, that whole south area is carved out, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. And then the balance in the north part remains as it is. So the new proposed TIF districts, Increment District D, which we've called the Coal Creek Village Project, and then Increment District E, which is the 121st Street Development Project. In both cases, there would be original terms of about 25 years from the commencement date, which the City Council will establish either at the time they adopt the ordinance or at some point after that fact. It would capture 100% of the incremental ad valorem sales and hotel taxes. Again, the baseline taxes within that area would not be affected. They would continue to accrue to the taxing jurisdictions. 75% of the new ad valorem tax increment would be apportioned to project costs. The remaining 25% would be apportioned to Jenks public schools to help offset capital costs that they may have just experiencing growth in the area. 56.34% of the sales tax is apportioned to project costs. That sounds like a very oddly specific amount. That equates to 2 cents of the 3.55% that's currently levied by the city. Were the city to increase your sales tax, if you went out and had an election and increased your sales tax up to 4%, the TIF would still capture 2 cents of the sales tax. If you got rid of a 1/2 cent, it would still capture 2 cents. So it's fixed on that number, but it happens to be 56% right now. The remainder would then be retained by the city, and that would just flow to the normal purposes of the sales tax ordinances. And then we don't anticipate at this point with this project necessarily any hotel development in this, but were there to be, it would be captured. Any hotel tax revenues would also be captured by the increment district. So the Coal Creek Village project is a transformative commercial center on the undeveloped area, basically on the northwest corner of 121st Street and Highway 75. The existing land conditions preclude development. If you're aware of the area, it's very low-lying. There's significant drainage issues. There's oil wells. There's gas pipelines. There's no real water, sewer, street infrastructure that serves that area. And so it requires significant investment in order to make that area developable and usable. The project would result in about 350,000 square feet of retail, service industry, and food service space. The initial projected investment is on the order of about $174 million. They preliminarily project about $132 million in annual sales, and that would generate over 25 years about $139 million in total sales tax collections, and about not quite $52 million to ad valorem, again 25% of which would go to the school district, just under $13 million based on that initial projection. And this is a preliminary site plan that Sooner Investments as the developer has proposed, and you see there's inline retail along the north side, and then out parcels that they anticipate, I think, primarily to be restaurant space along the south. You see a few improvements that are notated on there, lining up streets so that they coincide where existing lights are, so that there's good flow of traffic through along 121st and also connecting across, which of course immediately to the south is Glenpool, as you're all well aware. So this is the proposed boundaries of Increment District D, and so again it's the area, it's basically the west half of that area that is proposed to be carved out of Increment District 4, and then those two parcels that you saw that were not a part of Increment District 4, they are included there on the bottom left corner. It takes those two parcels in. The 121st Street Development Project, so this, we've just kind of generically termed this. We anticipate that as a result of this initial development, there will be additional commercial development that will go immediately to the west of that area. And so we've termed that 121st Street development. We have not attempted to project exactly how much that could be. We anticipate it would be somewhere on the order of magnitude of the initial development, the Coal Creek Village project, if it's fully developed. And here's the boundaries, and again, it's basically the west half of the area that we removed from Increment District number 4. The project area I mentioned is a much larger area, and it runs from 121st on the south end all the way up to the Turnpike, and then on the west side it's bordered by South 33rd Street West, and on the east side by Elwood. It's hard when you say south on one and then I'm thinking the other, so I got to make sure I keep those straight. That's the larger area, and we anticipate that there's a lot of street and water sewer infrastructure outside the Increment District boundaries that will need to be done in order to handle the traffic and the development in the area. And then there's additional infrastructure projects that have been identified specific to the Coal Creek Village that are internal to that relate specifically to that particular project. So the total estimated project costs are about $217,100,000. That includes $42.6 million, the Coal Creek project costs that I mentioned. And again, a lot of that addresses complete lack of internal infrastructure and also remediation relative to oil wells and moving pipelines and addressing drainage issues. There's a lot of water that comes across that area that has to be properly addressed so it doesn't have detrimental impacts downstream. And then there's city infrastructure project costs that have been identified at $174.5 million. And again, those include projects primarily outside of the Coal Creek project area, or the Coal Creek Village area, that are necessary, supporting improvements that are necessary just to the general infrastructure to support the development of the area. Other estimated uses of project costs total about $218 million, and that includes debt service costs that are anticipated, financing improvements for as long as 25 years relative to the Coal Creek Village. debt service costs related to the city infrastructure projects, and then school district capital costs. Those are, again, we mentioned initially about 13 million that we project to the schools, on the order of potentially 30 million if there were full development of the entire area over the 25-year time horizon. And then various organizational costs, including annual administration costs of about 650,000. Based on the Coal Creek Village project only, so again, just that increment D projected revenues, estimate about 51.8 million in ad valorem that would be captured, 38.9 that would be going to the TIF projects, and just under 13 million to the school. Estimate about 329 million in total sales tax revenues at a state, county, and city revenue, or city level. Most importantly, the TIF revenue would be about 78.19 million that's allocated to project costs, and about 60.6 million that would be going back to the city. And really, from the city's perspective, this is one of the important things. I mean, as you're aware, the city has a fairly limited retail base, and so there's a lot of dollars that leave Jenks to go to Tulsa Hills or wherever else. And so trying to attract more retail to the city represents a significant revenue source to help do all of the different infrastructure projects, whether it's within the TIF district or just across the city. Generally, enhancing that tax base is one of the primary missions of this project. So total projected revenues based again on just the Coal Creek project start around $130 million. And again, a similar order of magnitude potentially on the 121st Street development project. As project costs inflate over time, potentially, as there's inflation, there's obviously the potential it's significantly more. The city, like in recent TIF districts, recognizes the total amount of project costs may be in excess of the initial projected revenues, and so the city is not planning to go out and issue $200 million worth of debt right out of the gate to fund all these projects. These projects will be funded, and some will be funded up front, but some will maybe funded from other sources and recouped from TIF dollars at a later date. There may be other sources of funds that can help offset some of the project costs as well. The city will apportion TIF revenues pursuant to the project plan. The city manager is designated as the person in charge. The city will adopt and approve public agreements with developers as appropriate. The Local Development Act requires that you have an agreement with developers that are going to be receiving some sort of incentive benefit relative to a TIF district. So those would come forward to the city at a later date. And then the city will disperse the school district's allocation of the ad valorem revenues as they're received on an annual basis. I mentioned the assistance and development financing for developers. Again, we anticipate some portion of this is developer incentive. The Coal Creek internal projects anticipate that Sooner Investments, as the developer, will incur those costs themselves initially, and then once they've completed the project, then they would be taken out by project financing at a later date. So that helps provide some certainty to the city that the projects have been built, as opposed to we promise we'll build it. The infrastructure projects, as I mentioned, undertaken by the city, those will be public construction contracts subject to competitive bidding law, approved by the city, and subject to annual city auditing. The impacts on taxing entities, development sometimes drives rooftops. You could certainly have an increase in population, students, and associated needs. And again, that's one of the primary reasons for dedicating a specific revenue stream to the school district to help offset those costs. Significant retail development will help attract increased visitors to the city and reduce sales tax dollars lost to surrounding municipalities. That's obviously an important part as well. And then ancillary development outside the TIF districts may also generate additional revenue for all of the involved taxing entities. Business activities, new business inside increment districts will create short-term and long-term employment opportunities, which may also result in increased spending within the city, benefiting local businesses, and the attraction of increased visitors to the city. The TIF Review Committee met on April 14th, and they unanimously recommended approval of the TIF 4 amendment and the creation of increment districts D and E and the adoption of the Coal Creek Village project plan. The Planning Commission met on April 20th, and they also unanimously agreed approval with respect to both proposals. This is the first public hearing, and again, here in just a minute, you can open for questions relative to both projects. Second public hearing is scheduled for May 16th, 2 weeks from tonight, here during the City Council regular meeting at 6 o'clock. And then as early as May 16th, the city could consider, after all those steps have been taken, the city can consider adoption of its TIF ordinances to amend Increment 4 and create the new increment districts.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Any questions for council?
I have one
Mr.
question, a
Renzo.
clarification. If you would, go back to page 203 where the original TIF 4 district is set and the new increment districts right here. Thank you. With respect to the current existing developments in TIF District 4, by splitting this out to D and E, will the existing construction be able to receive funds from the taxes of D and E? I'm just trying to make sure that the current developments will be able to gain their money back as presented in the original TIF 4.
Yeah,
I went a long way around to get there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
A number of project costs that were originally incorporated into Increment 4 still remain as project costs relative to the new projects as well. Part of the reason why you have that expanded project area boundaries, some of the projects that have already been done in part help service or provide service to the greater development of that general area. I mean, they don't get it all the way, but they're part of that ultimate puzzle there. So the short answer is yes, the city does have the ability, should the revenues of 4 alone not be sufficient to reimburse what has already been requested and approved, the city could utilize, or they could designate a portion of the city infrastructure projects to pay those costs.
I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have any previous obligations that would not be fulfilled in the coming years with regard to reimbursement.
Yeah, and I've had a conversation with the developer of the Jenks Landing site, and I think that we're on the same page, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay. So we're considering both item number 4 and number 5 together. We're conducting the public hearing. This evening, we're taking any public comments. We will not be taking any action on this, on either one of these items. Are there any members of the public who have any comments or questions would like to speak this time? Ms. Montgomery.
Good evening, council and chair.
Could you pull your microphone down a little bit? Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify if I have the order right, because a lot of things have happened since February regarding TIFs in general. So there was District 1, it was amended, and the aquarium campus was removed and replaced with TIF B. So we now have a new TIF B, which is like the aquarium campus. And then we have District 2, that was terminated. It was the outlet mall and replaced with TIF A. So now we have a new TIF A, that's the outlet mall. And we have a new TIF C, which is the sports experience. And I'm asking this as a question. I want to make sure I have it straight. And we have a District 3, which I think is the soccer field.
District 3 is Gateway. It's basically everything from Highway 75 going to Elwood along Main, except Gregory Circle is not included.
Okay. So Gateway. And then we now have a District 4. That's been amended, but a portion of it still remains. And part of it was removed to create a TIF D, which was Coal Creek Village. And then we are now also have a new TIF E, which is 121st. That's correct, right? So we now have 8 TIFs. Are you going to create a map for us to have on the website?
Pass the
Because,
test.
I mean, I really have a hard time following which TIF is which. Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay. I don't expect it like tomorrow, but are we looking at probably a month or two, something like that?
Yeah, I would suspect that if this plan gets approved, we could have something on the website. I mean, we could even put something up before it's approved, but,
Okay. That would be helpful, because I think you're also going to maybe rename them, so TIF A is no longer TIF A. Okay, okay. I had a question. Who owns the frontage road that goes from 111th to 121st and spits out right by the Walmart? Is that a Tulsa County road? Is that a Jenks road?
we've been trying to figure that out too. No, it's I believe the property is the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, but we are responsible for maintaining it according to them. And there can be no ingress or egress to the east, but we supposedly have the responsibility of allowing or not allowing ingress and egress west.
Okay. Regarding that egress that you have, is that part of the project cost? Because on this one, I know that in TIF A, B, and C, there was a list of all the different project costs, project names with the cost. So I couldn't tell from the description that was here, is that also going to be part of the improvements?
Yes.
Okay. My other question is on, I forget which page it is, but it was talking about the identified project costs. It had one part of it that was 217 million, and then the other category was called other project costs of 218 million. So does that mean that both TIF D and E now have 435 million in total project costs?
Mr. Ellis.
The project plan actually identifies 217,100,000 in actual construction project costs. The other 218 is a projection of, if we finance that at the outset, what would be the related financing interest costs of the debt service related to that. You'd have principal of 217 million, you'd have interest potentially over 25 years of as much as 218 million. So, yeah, but the project cost, the project plan itself specifies it's just the 217 million.
That's project costs. They're very
Yeah,
separate.
hard construction costs.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
I think I have a pretty good basic understanding of how TIFs work. I do realize that with TIF revenues, that it stays within that TIF. You can't use TIF revenues for A for like D. I do understand that. But when I take a look at all between TIF A, B, C, D, and E, you know, we're looking at $500 million, and I realize that a lot of that will come back through the TIF revenues, but we also have several projects coming in at the same time. You know, the Outlet Mall, there's several things going on with the Aquarium Campus. There is the Sooner Investments coming in with this large retail. There's maybe the Ripken project coming in too. So anything that isn't paid or repaid through the TIF revenues, you two have to figure out kind of, well, where are we shuffling monies? Where are we getting monies for that to come from? And especially with all of these coming together, how are you going to prioritize that gap? I mean, who gets the money from what source? And my concern is if you have all of these come together and you're short $150 million, I don't think you have $150 million to help support those project costs. So I'm really curious, what is the plan? I mean, I know that you talk about, oh, well, we can look at utility costs, we can look at a variety of financing, maybe geo bonds, but I've never really heard a specific plan. So I'm really concerned if everything comes together at pretty much at the same time, how are you going to fund that? Are you gonna have to come to us and say, hey, you're gonna need a geo bond? I just wanna know the reality on that. And the rest of the stuff I think I can just make by request, but I wanted to ask you how to go about it because it's not really an open records request, but the presentations that Mr. Ellis has done are generally similar, but particularly with some of the TIF A, B, and C, I can't segregate out like what was the projected revenues or the projected project costs for each TIF. They were kind of an aggregate. So I want to find out like what is each one have for expected revenues and for projected project costs, that type of thing. How do I go about requesting that? Do I just send you an email? How do I do that?
So specifically with TIF A, B, and C, we have had conversations with concepts, whether they're entertainment or just straight retail. And so we have an idea of the revenue that will be generated by the outlet mall, for instance. And what we've tried to do in negotiating any economic development agreement is provide the developer reimbursement through only the sales tax and property tax that they generate. So for instance, the mall, they would be eligible to receive reimbursement through the sales tax that they generate on their 50 acres and the property tax that they generate. If there's a concept going on the aquarium campus, the goal is to not use the TIF as an economic incentive so that that revenue from the property tax and sales tax from a development on the aquarium campus can be used for city infrastructure. And I think similarly on this TIF that we're looking at right now, in the yellow area, sooner development could be, the idea is they would be reimbursed through the sales tax and property tax that they generate.
Okay, so what if there's a shortfall? That's my question, is what's the plan, especially if they all come together near the same time and they need this infrastructure? What's the plan? Is there a priority list? Oh, we're gonna pull from this area in the budget, or we're gonna do this? That's what I'm asking, is really what is the plan?
So the way the TIF, the way that we have done TIFs in the past is it's a first in, first out. So for instance, the Jenks Landing developer, they applied for $4 million worth of reimbursements. In that instance, it's a pay-as-you-go, and so if the TIF doesn't generate what was projected and they don't meet the 4 million, now this is a little bit different because now we have a new TIF south of it that they would be eligible for reimbursement through the new TIF. But let's take the Gateway TIF, for instance. That will pay out, I believe, at least to Gateway, who did the majority of the work, and let's say that they had $6 million in reimbursements. That's another pay-as-you-go, and so if the TIF doesn't generate the revenue, then Gateway doesn't get the full $6 million that they applied for, and the city is not on the hook for that.
Okay.
What Sooner is hoping to do is basically finance their project through the TIF, and we've run the projections based on their numbers that it will pay the debt service on that note. And there's additional TIF revenue that could be used to make up the difference if there is a shortfall. And we do not have an economic development agreement with them at this time. But my expectation would be when we do negotiate that, if there is a shortage on the note or the servicing of the debt, it would be their responsibility.
And I think that's what you did with Jenks Landing, wasn't it?
We do not have a,
I must be thinking about a different one. But
yeah, they
anyway.
didn't finance through the TIF. They just, it's a pay-as-you-go.
Okay, so we're not on the hook if they're short.
That's the idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Any other public comments tonight? Then let's close the floor to item number 4 and number 5. We don't vote on anything. Okay. All right, you're going to refresh me. Ms. Nellen, you're going to refresh my memory on item number 6. We're going to discuss the ordinance, but then table it? Yeah. Okay. Mr. Macy, would you like to? Read the item. Okay. So item number 6 is ordinance number 1614, ordinance amending sections 14-2-22, furnishing tobacco products to minors, repealing all ordinances or parts thereof in conflict herewith, providing for severability and declaring an emergency. We're on page 217. Mr. Macy, please.
All right, thank you very much, Counselor. TSED reached out at this point 2 years ago, I think. I'm not exactly sure. A while back to update our access to youth access to tobacco ordinance. Update it not only with state law, but also to just bring it up to a more modern standard. The plan was to approve it tonight. However, Vicki Wagner with the Tulsa County Health Department came in today and said we were accidentally missing a slight part. So staff recommends just talking about this ordinance, letting Ms. Wagner speak, and then also just going over everything it does, and then tabling it till the next meeting when we can bring back a corrected ordinance and pass it.
Very good. Ms. Wagner?
I am short, sorry. Thank you for your consideration of updating the tobacco enabling ordinance. My name is Vicki Wagner, and I work with a TSET Healthy Living program at the Tulsa County Health Department. So what we do, we have a comprehensive strategic plan, and we basically want people to eat better, move more, and be tobacco-free to help address the obesity and cardiovascular disease rates that we have here in Oklahoma. And so we have a comprehensive strategic plan, and one of our pieces of the strategic plan is focusing on tobacco. And one of our action items is to work with the communities in Tulsa County to update their enabling ordinances, basically updating the language from 18 years to purchase tobacco products to 21 years to purchase tobacco products. And we reached out to Brandon, and hi, Marseille, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. We've been doing Zoom meetings. We started, like Brandon said, a couple years ago. And so we have a TSET proposal, and Brandon sent me the proposed ordinance tonight. And I was just getting ready to leave for vacation, so I was on vacation Thursday, Friday, and yesterday, and came back today. And I realized that there's a piece of language missing in the ordinance that we would like to add. And basically, that piece of language is distribution of tobacco product and vapor product samples. So it's the distribution piece. So we'd like to go and work with Brandon, or Marseille, and Melissa, or Teresa, to add that language in and bring it back to you at another council meeting.
Very good. We just table this, or how? Okay. Do we have a motion to table till the next meeting or some future date?
Motion to table it to the next meeting or designated date.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Mr. Macy? Vote, please.
Schilling,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Short.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
future consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. So item number 7 will not consider tonight. Item number 8, ordinance number 1615 relating to JZ 23 PUD 130.MA1, a major amendment to PUD 130 to allow for medical use with therapy animals at the general location of 9330 South Elwood. Mrs. Hilton, we're on page 222. Please, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Short and Acting Chair and other councilors. It's great to be here this evening. This is a major amendment to PUD 130. This is the first major amendment we've had on this parcel. The original PUD was approved September 21st, 2021, and that was to create a retail office warehouse on that 2.24 something acres. In the meantime, the sale did not go through, so the owner that brought that PUD to us opted not to purchase the property, and then the hearing doctor, which was previously on the on Main Street towards the lighthouse down there, purchased the property and put their office in. It's not full redevelopment, so the parcel has not been platted at this time. And they have asked the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission said, sure, this sounds like a great idea. Staff said, let's talk about this. I think it's a good idea. So let me back up just a minute. The parcel was originally ag, and we rezoned it to commercial shopping, and with the PUD on top of that. And at the time of rezoning, there were 3 horses on the property. 2 left and 1 stayed. And the hearing doctor was fine with the one that stayed. And since then, the hearing doctor has become a certified wellness therapist. And so they are asking you all to consider allowing them to have therapy animals on site. So it's a little bit different. It doesn't really fit neatly in the code, but I think because we already have a planned unit development, it would work great. We did hear from the 1 or 2 members of the public who were in support. They always love the horses and they're happy to keep them there. The page 222, there's no current change to the zoning. There's just an addition of the allowance for these animals. And the intended use is restated as commercial retail office warehousing and services with therapy animals. If you go to the next page in your report, it is 2.27 acres. If they ever did redevelop, so PUD 130 still exists, and they still have the option to fully develop that site with retail and warehousing. So that does, just because we're allowing animals now doesn't mean that in the future they could not move forward with their original plan. Let's see. We did, everyone was really happy about the animals during the first round of hearings and really sad about a warehouse, so they're also still very happy about the animals. On page 226, it says, adding the legal use of therapy animals to the property does not impact the original approvals of PUD 130. Approving this request will allow the hearing doctor to expand the number and type of animals on the property to provide for therapy service. Then I also included Article 2, which is in our city code and talks about how to maintain an animal habitat, etc. So they would have to abide by all of that. That being said, staff and Planning Commission recommend approval of PUD 130 Major Amendment Number 1.
Very good. Any questions or discussion from the council? Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item at this time?
I'm in favor, and if you guys have any questions, I'll jump up.
Thanks, Mr. Bell. Okay, thank you, Ms. Hilton. Regarding item number 8, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve item number 8, ordinance number 1615 relating to JZ 23 PUD 130.MA1, a major amendment to PUD 130 to allow for medical use with therapy animals at the general location 9330 South Elwood Avenue.
Second?
Okay, we have a first and a second. Vote, please.
Schelling,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Short.
Yes. Item number 9, we will not be considering due to we don't have enough counselors present tonight. Item number 10, Resolution 798, requesting the Indian Nation Council of Governments to program Tulsa Urbanized Area Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG funds, for consideration for funding for federal fiscal year 2025 for construction of the Elwood Avenue 91st Street to 96th Street widening project, which is Phase 1. Phase 1 will be in the southern portion of the 1340 feet of the roadway section between 91st and 96th. Mr. Cloyd, we are on page 245.
Good evening, Acting Chair and Councilor Short and rest of City Council and staff. I'm going to speak to both items that you have before you. Item, I believe, 10 and 11, but they'll require two separate votes for each resolution. So a new round of federal funding on the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program has opened for applications by NCOG for the federal fiscal year of 2025. Federal funding for this program can be to a maximum of $3 million per project. A minimum of 20% has to be provided by the local entity, and no single entity can receive more than a combined sum of more than $6 million for any fiscal year. Staff has elected to choose the Elwood Avenue project from 91st to 96th Street for the submission for this application of funds this year. As a reminder, the Elwood Avenue project from 91st to 96th Street is a widening project that will widen the roadway from 2 lanes to 3 lanes. The third lane will be an alternating center turn lane and medians. In addition, the project will include installation of curb and gutter along the streets, storm sewer systems, a 10-foot wide trail on the east, and a 5-foot wide sidewalk on the west, pedestrian signals at 91st Street, and the medians will be equipped with irrigation and power. Staff has elected to break this project up into 2 phases so that we can maximize the amount of funding that we can get from the federal spend on this project. So the first phase of the project would be the southern part, or 1,340 feet of Elwood Avenue from 91st to 96th Street. And the reason why we made that part the first part is because that's the part that would connect to the storm sewer system on the south. So we would build that first, ideally. If we don't get approval for both of these phases, we build that one first, and then we would come back and build phase 2 later. Hopefully, we'll get approval for both, but there's a chance we may not. But we would prioritize that one first. So the total cost estimate for the first phase amounts to $3,312,317.80. In your memo, you see the breakdown between the two. The second phase would be the northern part, or the northern 1,280 feet of that same roadway section. The total cost estimate for that part would be $2,838,040.96. In case you're curious, if we add both of those together, what does that amount to? So the total for both projects together would be $6,150,358.76. The federal portion of both of those together would be $4,920,287.01, and then the local portion to fund both of those phases would be $1,230,071.75. No funds are requested to be appropriated at this time, though. We still need to get approval for one or both of these projects through the NCOG selection process. When it's determined that the project is awarded for funding by ODOT, the project budget and funding source will be developed and presented for acceptance by council. Applications for these projects were submitted to NCOG on April 18th in order to meet their deadline, which was April 21st. A requirement for the application is to attach an STBG project resolution adopted by the governing body at a public meeting. So the requested resolutions, Resolution 789 798 and 799, to satisfy that requirement are these 2 agenda items, and they're due by May 17th. Are there any questions for me?
Any questions from council? I would like to make one point on the agenda item, Resolution 799. had in quotes phase 1, but it's actually phase 2.
That's correct.
It does say phase 2 later on, but just to clarify. Any questions from council?
Do we have a tentative date that INCOG will come to a decision on these requests?
We do.
And if it's in the material, I apologize, I missed
That's
it.
okay. So what will happen is, like I said, the applications are due April 21st. The preliminary list is sent to the technical committee May 17th. The preliminary list goes to the policy committee on May 29th, and then the approved list of projects goes to INCOG board on June 13th.
Very good. Any other questions, council? Thank you, Mr. Cloyd. Let's vote on item number 10. Do I have a motion for resolution 798?
Make a motion to approve item number 10, resolution 798.
Do I have a second? Vote, please. We have a good second, first and second.
Schelling,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Murray.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Short.
Yes. Item number 11, resolution 799 for phase 2. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
Motion to approve resolution 799, referencing phase 2.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Schelling,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Murray.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Short.
Yes. On to other business, city manager's report. Mr. Schraub.
Mayor and all members of council, acting mayor rather. We have quite a few upcoming events in May. We have the citywide garage sale Saturday, May 6th. We have the Jenks Chamber Day at the Capitol that begins on the evening of Monday, May 8th and runs through Tuesday, May 9th until 1 p.m. If you plan to attend that, please let Sarah know so she can get you registered. We have the Tulsa Chamber DC Fly-In Wednesday, May 10th and Thursday, May 11th. We have the Jenks Chamber Morning Mingle on Thursday, May 11th from 8:30 to 9:30. Saturday, May 13th, we have the Jenks Kiwanis Club Trash Bash from 8 to 4. That's at 106th and Elm. The Jenks Chamber Monthly Luncheon featuring Jim Bridenstine is Wednesday, May 17th at noon at the Hive. The Oklahoma Aquarium is celebrating their 20th anniversary on Saturday, May 20th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. We have the Chamber Legislative Luncheon on Friday, May 26th from noon to 1 p.m. at the Hive. And then we have the annual Jenks Chamber Bowling for Business at Andy B's on Thursday, June 8th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The budget, or I guess the city, JPWA, JADA, and JAA all held budget committee meetings, and they all recommended the budget changes to the second year of the budget to the full governing bodies. The Fox Run pavement repair, I believe, is that complete?
Yes, except for sealing of some of the joints on one street.
And then also the Slate Creek, Wood Lake, Country Woods 2, Country Hollow, South Woods, pavement improvement project. The crack sealing is complete in all neighborhoods. Is there anything else to be done? Chris hosted the Master Drainage Study Phase 2 public meeting on April 27th at 6 p.m. at City Hall, and we had 16 residents attend and provide input on the drainage issues. Salad and Go, the building footings have been excavated. O'Reilly's has a roof now on their new building near Casey's. And then we continue to negotiate with the local fire union on their contract for the upcoming year. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Strout? Thank you for your report. Any committee reports tonight? INCOG? Okay. Since Mayor Box is absent, we'll pass on the mayor's report. We are now officially adjourned at 6:59.
Well done.
Thank you, everybody. All right, I'd like to call to order the meeting for the Jenks Public Works Authority. Again, Mayor Box and Vice Mayor Ogier are out. My name's Kevin Short, at-large Jenks City Councilor. I want to call the meeting to order. Mr. Mason, can we get a roll call, please?
Schilling,
Here.
Isbell,
Present.
Murray, here, Klein,
Present.
Short,
Here.
Ogier, Chair Box. All right.
Item number 1, consideration of appropriate action relating to the request for approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as is.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have good first, second.
Isbell,
Yes.
Schilling,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Short.
Yes. We will withdraw number 2. General Manager's report, Mr. Stroud, do you have anything?
I do not have anything further to add.
Very good. Well, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. 7:01.